Welcome to the Be a Human in Business show with your hosts, Tracy Borison, founder and personal branding coach at TLB Coaching and Events, Tara Argo, founder and relationship strategist at Argo Operations, Tawana Taylor, founder and project management consultant at Bootstrap Dreams, Debbie Aquara, founder and principal consultant at Niche Customer Experience Consulting Firm. Let's start the show.
All right, great people. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Be a Human in Business. We are joined today with David, and we are so excited to have him because he is just as creative as his background is. You will absolutely
love it.
You will absolutely love what he's going to share. Get ready, grab your notepads, grab your pens. We're going to have a really rich conversation. A little housekeeping before we do all of the other goodness. We want to give our hearts to Tracy and Debbie, who are not here with us today, but they are with us in spirit. All right, without further ado, David, please introduce yourself to the people. Let them know some of the things that you've shared about us and where you'd like to take today's conversation, because as you all know, we chit chat before we start the record button, and sometimes we're like, we should have hit it sooner because you guys might have missed something good, but you can always ask for your favorite guests to come back. So off to you, David. Let's go.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, my name is David Schmeikal, and I am a creative soul, a jack of all trades, and a vision guide in a lot of ways for my clients. I've been told one thing that everybody can really count on me for is to hold them accountable to their big dreams. And I believe that we all have a big dream, and that we are the only ones to make our dream a reality, but that we cannot do it on our own. It's not possible, but we are the only ones responsible for our big dreams. And I think there's a collapse that can tend to happen in that idea, right? Find ourselves waiting for something to happen and not knowing or understanding why. So I do a lot of work inside of if anything was possible for the future, what would you like that future to look like? What happens 10 years from now in an ideal world driven by what it is that you have a big, there's a purpose behind, and there's a fulfillment around having realized in the world. And then who do you need to be to have that actually happen? Mm-hmm. We touched on it earlier. There aren't many who are willing to take the deep dive and to explore more about what it is that makes us who we are. It is automatic for the most part. We are unaware of what it is that dictates our moves in life, and so we just move through life. But there's always this part that is unfulfilled, right? It's the restlessness, in the pit of your stomach, there is this grip, this knot that is really crying for resolution, to be heard. We have a brain in our gut. Not many people know that, right? It is just as intellectual as the brain in our head, perhaps more emotional than intellectual. And it's a lot quieter than the really loud voices that are up top, kind of guiding and directing us. But deep down, there is something that if we would just slow down and allow it the space and time to give voice, we're revealing things that are part of our guiding, the thing that guides us, right? Our true north lives there. But but we don't give it enough time. And I like to give it a voice and give it some space, and explore and create with that side of us, because humans are, well, we all want to see something happen for ourselves and for our lives and for our families and for our businesses, and we just need to give it some space to be realized.
Awesome. Now, when you talk about giving it space, I know I'm going to go gender here, right? As a woman, it is very awesome, in my opinion, to hear a man speak so purposefully about giving things space, because often in society, right, it's the woman who nurtures things, right? It's the woman who is pictured. It doesn't mean men don't do it, but the picture is pushed that the woman has to dedicate time, the woman has to give space, the woman has to do all of these things, set self aside, and the man just has to go, get it, provide, right? And so it's really refreshing to hear from a male's perspective about taking time and giving things space. Where does that come from for you?
That's there was a time in my life where that was what was happening. Go, go, go. Not really knowing why or what it is that I'm going towards, but go, go, go. And inside of that, really wandering aimlessly, feeling lost. And what happens is we are who we hang around, right? The association that lives around us, it is what ignites or kills off these notions, these sparks, these ideas, these things that come from deep within that are like seeds and really do need time and attention to be nurtured. But and this is not a man thing necessarily. This is a human being thing in a lot of ways, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
We are going, and then we are unaware of what we are killing along the way.
That's right.
Physically, metaphorically, wherever you are, right? And so we will step on said seedling and it is dead.
That's right.
And then we are left wondering what happened.
What happened?
Because we didn't actually know we stepped on it. So there were people that came into my life, and there were many of them, and there was a readiness on my side, or really a lack of readiness. Yeah, that there came a point where I started to see the need to slow down, and I was still going pretty damn fast.
Yeah.
Right.
When that awareness came.
Yeah. And I thought I was slowing down, and people would be like, yeah, you should probably slow down a little bit more.
Some more.
I'm like, what? How's that even possible? Because it wasn't a possibility in my world. I didn't even see it was a thing that I could access at the time. But that's the beauty of those around you who are doing what it is that you have a curiosity to be able to apply into your own life, and to start the awareness, the journey of getting aware of the narrative that's going on in your mind. That it's not you driving that narrative. It might occur as like you saying those things, but it's not. We are spectators of our own lives at times. And when we start to see and appreciate just how much we are spectators of our life, that's when the slowing down really becomes an easy thing to do, because you actually want to appreciate what it is that you're looking at, right? Instead of going from one to the next.
Right.
So that was a big a catalyst for me. These larger than life people, humble, grounded, big dreamers and thinkers, movers and shakers. Like, how do you do it all? What is the formula? And it was in there where it started to make sense. And this was a recent journey, right? I'd say 8 years now. I'm 42. There is an ongoing narrative for me in my head with my characters, of which I've given them all names, that I am late to the game. But actually, and this got created for me by, again, another person that I admire in my world, who's like, well, actually, everything that has gone on in your world has unfolded exactly the way it needed to unfold for you to be ready for right now.
That's right.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
And I've been told that several times too.
Yes.
You know, something, David, that you were saying, and I completely resonate with the slowing down. And I shared this with you when we initially met, was that COVID really is what slowed me down, right? Like, I had no idea slowing down was an option either. And it is something that I've struggled with my entire life, being present, being in the moment, knowing that that's okay, really looking internally. So listening to you, I can completely resonate with that. And what I wanted to say is that when we initially met, something that you and I talked a lot about is that conforming to the social norms, to what we've always been told, or we've always thought's the only way. Like, I would love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think that for me, I'm so grateful. As much as, you know, COVID is awful. I mean, it's done so much damage to our world, but for so many of us, like, that was what we needed to slow us down.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Light is more easily seen in dark places.
Absolutely.
That's right.
But if we're going and everything kind of looks the same, what distinguishes one thing from another, right? We actually need some of these polarizing, contrasting moments and experiences, even though we might not want them, to really appreciate and understand what it is that we do. And even then there's then action to take, right? Which is a whole other game, because that's now where bravery and courage comes in. My whole life, I was raised in a religious context, and I got a lot of good things out of that religious context. And there were a lot of things that were a conflict for me, an internal conflict for me. The absolution of it all didn't resonate for me. And I will simplify this a lot, but there was really a lot required in order to get to the overly simplified notion, right? But human beings, and you see this going on in the world right now, as lived, we hold a lot of weight to the truth. We seek the truth. We seek facts to support the truth. But unfortunately, and unbeknownst to most of us, we are by default biased.
Absolutely.
Our history, our experiences, our influences drive the bias that is there. And most of the time, we are unaware that we are biased. We think we are open.
Yeah, the unconscious bias.
Yeah. And so while we believe truly that thing is the truth, it is only a truth based on the bias that we hold in the world. And this goes with everybody, whether you're a scientist or a politician or a religious leader. We seek to find validation in the truths we are looking to validate. That does not diminish what it is that they are, but that simply is not the truth, because we don't have the full picture, and likely will never have the full picture, because I don't think it's possible We have so many perspectives. We have so many books. We have so many insights and deep dives in different directions. How could we possibly ever come to an absolute truth? Absolutely, it's not. But that's what we throw around, and what we then expect others to embrace without question, because it's the truth. How do you question the truth? Well, I can question your truth, not to say that it is not true, but that it's not necessarily the truth. Many aren't willing to do that kind of work, though, right? And so here we are in places where we just don't know what to do or what step to take.
Yeah, that leads me into a next thought. You've shared something with us about a belief that we're all creative. What do you express to people who believe they are not?
That we're all created?
That we're all creative.
Oh, creative. Yes. Oh, yes. This is so good. Yeah, we try our best to predict what the future is going to look like. All of us, right? We manufacture these fantastical outputs. Some of them are amazing and they're true utopias. Others are the opposite, dystopian, hell. And then almost in the same breath, we will claim that we are not creative. The irony in that in itself, every day, every second, we are thinking, we are creating. And while we're not very good at predicting what the future is going to look like, because those outlandish notions and ideas and stories that we tend to obsess over never actually go that way, we're actually really good at creating. And it's just about channeling that creative energy with some intention, not necessarily with a brush or a pen, and it could be with a brush or a pen, but really just embracing your innate creativity. And they look and feel and are experienced differently across the board. You could be analytical. Your creativity might live inside of spreadsheets, or you are a builder and your creativity lives inside of the structures we operate within. It holds no bounds. It is limitless in its output, but we, by our own design, limit our outputs and think that we're not creative.
Yeah. Tara, I see your head nodding. What do you have to say?
It's just so good because, before I would always say that I was not creative, but I've come to know that I am creative. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective on that, because I agree that I think that you have to kind of change that narrative, though, because people don't think of living inside of a spreadsheet as being creative, or living inside of the structure or creating the structure that it makes them creative. So I think it's like, it goes back to kind of an education thing, though, is educating them that the term creative doesn't fit you in this one little box, that, you're painting beautiful pictures like that are behind you, like all of these things are considered creative.
Yes,
they are created, are they not?
That's right.
Exactly right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
exactly right.
The thing that I love to share, no matter what the setting, personally or professionally, David, I love enlightening people, if they're willing to receive it and hear it, that there's freedom and boundaries, right? So for those that think, oh, well, because this is structure, it's not created. Whatever wall, whatever shape you decide to make that wall be, however high or low you decide to create that fence, it's not so much about what you can't do outside of it. It is about all the immaculate things you can do within it. Right?
I have a really great metaphor for that.
What is it?
I like to use this often. Picture a pinball machine. Inside of that pinball machine, there is this little steel ball that we want to move and interact with the game, right? To achieve an objective. How How good do you think that game would be if your pinball board was wide and deep and long? And do you think it would be a very meaningful, impactful game in those moments of trying to wait for that ball to like arrive back to the bumper to hit it
back over
again?
here.
It wouldn't be very fun, and we would lose interest very quickly.
Very
And
quickly.
equally so if you had a pinball game that had no bumpers, no walls, no barriers, wouldn't be much of a game at all.
Yeah.
And so and it's this funny little dichotomy between freedom and control. To be creative, we need barriers, and we need barriers that are tempered, and they are a good distance, right? That allows for some freedom, but still some resistance, because that's where the game gets most exciting, when that ball is just bouncing around everywhere. And now I don't really play pinball at all, but I find it like a really easy concept to understand, right? We need to get that ball in motion, and we need resistance to keep it in motion. Same thing with our creativity.
Yes. And I think it's the same thing with relationships with people.
Oh, totally.
Right? Having healthy boundaries, or knowing who you are so that you know who you are not, will give you that space to really form, right, your perspective, to form and identify what you are great at, so that you can make room for who you need, for the things you aren't, so that you can start living out the reality that you want to create. So you can start pushing the creativity that you want to explore, or pursuing rather, right? Just being able to activate those things have a lot to do with your boundaries.
Totally.
This is so good. Did you have something, Tara?
Well,
go into the next question.
Do you have a question?
I do.
Okay, you can go ahead. I have a question, but it might be a really good wrap-up question too, whenever we get to that point.
Fantastic. All right. So, David, you share about the future. You speak about the future and your belief that we're moving in one direction. A quote that you had for us is, I believe the next generation of leaders needs to step out and be known. If you could share one thing that our next generation can do to do that, to step out and be known, what would that be?
One thing.
I know.
You put a really small
you can
box
you can share all the things.
You can share all the things, but we also would encourage you to contact David. We'll put all of his contact information.
That's right. And go have these deep conversations. They're so rich. Every time that I visit with them, I walk away and I'm like, I just blows my mind. Go for those conversations. You don't want to overwhelm the people too much, because people get scared when you give them, when they realize too many
how much it requires. So it's like, if there were a next natural step, what would that step be? To step out and be known.
You need to, and you mentioned this already once, you need to know who you are. You need to do the work to better understand why you function the way you do. Because when we're clear, when I started to understand why I operated the way I did, what the programs were that were running the operating system, and what it was that I didn't agree with, or no, it was no longer appropriate. Like there was a really a growing out of these ways of being. There was new programs to create and download, right? So we really need to start with understanding ourselves better. And writing is a great way to begin that journey, to ask the question, who am I? Who do I know myself to be, and who do I want to be known as out in the world? It's a really great place to start.
So good.
That is so good. And that actually does lead kind of right into my question. Is that, you were talking about that still small voice, that our gut, that we don't really hear because we do push it down. And that's something that the next generation can hopefully tap into a little bit more, to learn to be present and to slow down and to really learn who they are. That was something that I never did until I became an entrepreneur. And I'm still working on that. But like, who do you need to be in order to allow yourself to be self-aware enough? Because I think a lot of times that we as humans, we're just not self-aware. And I think you have to be self-aware in order to allow yourself to hear that so small voice. So could you share anything on that?
I'm sure I could. Let me just dig in the old tickle trunk here. There is a phenomenon called ontology. It is the practice of understanding our way of being. Mm-hmm. And our way of being, there are three areas. It is our physiological state, right? How our body reacts, how we move our body, how we posture ourselves. And then there is the words that we use. Mm-hmm. How effective do you think this conversation would be without words? Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be able to really have a very effective conversation. Mm-hmm. Our whole world is created inside of language, right? So language and our words are critical to gain a better understanding of our way of being. And then there is the emotional component of it. How are we feeling? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times how we're feeling is dismissed and diminished, mm-hmm. or set aside. The language that we use, we are not mindful of the words that we use. We just speak. Mm-hmm. And how we move our bodies, right, in situations or just on a regular basis, the intention around all three of those areas is where to focus. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of work to do in all of those areas, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so my journey started with my words. Okay. What I was saying. And there was one gentleman, I can't remember his name, but he was probably my first guide I didn't realize he was a guide, right? Okay. He's this guy, he came in, we had one coffee, and he said something to me, and I can't remember exactly what, because I probably wasn't paying attention because I was in my head thinking about the words that I should be using, and so not actually listening to the words that he was using. Mm-hmm. But I did hear what he said in that I was not paying attention, and I was not mindful of the language that I was using. And mm-hmm. and it was because of the negative context that the impression was made of him by me, right? Like, mm-hmm. actually that didn't come out right. I created a negative impression of myself uh-huh. with him. Uh-huh. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what? No, I didn't. He's like, no, you did. You did. And these are the things that I heard. And I'm like, what? Yes. What are you talking about? First lesson. I didn't even know what I was saying. I was just, I was regurgitating it out. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What was really inside, right? The belief, the truth that you had about you at that time.
At the time.
It
was there, and it was revealing itself. And so the truth, it definitely reveals itself, but it's not the way you think it reveals itself.
That's right. And especially when someone else, like you talked about earlier in our conversation, your truth, that someone else will bring their experiences, their perspective, right? It processes, it filters through them, and they hear something totally different, right? Not that they mean for you to have something different, but because they're filtering it from them, their truth, your truth and their truth, it's like, wow, you don't even see how great you are.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you don't even know how impactful and how meaningful of a life you live currently, right now, not then, right? Not where you're trying to get to go, but the life that you're leading right now, the experiences that you've already overcome, how impactful and how great they are and have positioned you for where you do aspire to go. So yeah.
And that's why it's important to write,
Mhm.
because we got a lot going on.
We got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I've even built my own journaling structure, because there were many things that I appreciated, that I found value in, and I wanted to be able to use bits and pieces of all of it. And so that's what I've been doing, and continue to do for the last 4 years, is just write, but write with intention, right? Where there is a clear direction to take. Well, don't forget about the journey, the journeys, the richness and the clarity and the awareness and the understanding of what worked and what didn't. And if we don't spend the time to make note of it, and it's not to say that, you got to be consistently knocking this thing out of the park, home runs. There are many weeks where my book is empty. And I unfortunately, I don't remember why they're empty, and therein lie the missed opportunity, but it is what it is. That is life. But to continue to create context for yourself, should you ever look back to it, is very valuable. It sees where you've been and what you've been doing, and the journey you've experienced, and that you've actually gone a long way.
That really, no one's ever said anything like that about journaling to me. And it is not something that I ever want to do, but you, and it's because I just talk in my head way too much. I totally need to be putting this down on paper. But because you explained it in a way that resonated with me, because you were talking about the journey, and it would allow me to go back and see where I've been. Like, that is doable for a high achiever like myself. The other way just does not resonate with me. So I think that was very helpful for me. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to make note of is, I think that, when that gentleman shared that with you, I think it's incredible that you could take that and you could use it to better yourself, and you could take that. It wasn't criticism, it was helping you get better. And I think that's something that we as humans, and it doesn't matter what generation, we have to be willing to, when people share something with us like that we can take that, and if it is something that we need to work on, that we can accept that and not be defensive, right? Like, I think that,
to be clear, I did not take it. I did not accept it. I was not open.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
But now you would be, I'm sure.
But it's different. That's, that was a different David. But it was never forgotten. And I think that's the piece. And
that's the piece.
It
pierced you.
Totally. Like there was something
the start
there
for you. Yes.
And then the respective people that started to come around. I would say it kind of scratched the surface a little bit, and I saw something that I hadn't seen before, even if I wasn't willing to accept it. But you can't unsee it.
Yeah,
that's it's right. Like
the scales came off. It's like,
yes.
Yeah. And I actually was listening
to a podcast this morning, and they said just that. Like, once you see it, it's over. Like, you've seen it and you can't unsee it. And that is so true in life.
Yeah.
David, you have to come back. It's just, there's so much. I mean, we could talk for days.
We really could. And there's definitely, I hope that those of you who are watching will do as David has suggested, and give yourself time to reflect, pause, write with intention, so that you can uncover what your truth is and the truth you want to create. We're not saying be fantastical and don't live in, a life that is tangible. We are saying, though, if you don't like your truth, you can create a very real, valuable, evident new truth that the journey will support, right?
Mhm.
So we like to wrap up every show with a summary because we know there's so many components in it that you might have missed. So hopefully we will do you justice, David, in giving our viewers, our community, some of the gems that you have dropped. So today we talked about pushing boundaries and creating new possibilities, giving yourself space, time, and attention to nurture things, see the need to slow down. We also covered how we are all creative, all of us. Not necessarily great predictors, though, but we're really good at creating. We are thinking every single day. David shared with us to be creatives, we need barriers that are tempered and at a good distance to allow some freedom and some resistance. If you need another context to put that in, think about a good workout. No pain, no gain, right? You got to build it in. Also, know who you are. Start with understanding yourself better and grow out of unserving ways of being. To become more self-aware, David encourages us to start with our words, be mindful of the language we're using. And lastly, but certainly not least, don't forget about your journey. David.
Amazing. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Let me
Thanks
give
for
my
having me.
reactions.
Right?
This was so good.
The
I can't
round.
find them.
A round of
Yes.
applause.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just, we can definitely go deeper. There's so many, we know there are steps, right? Because there's layers to this. And so we're not saying that if you write today, you'll have your world figured out tomorrow. We are saying that you can start. And you want David to come back? Let us know. You have questions for David? Ask them, put them in a comment and share with us. What's one thing that you'll do to be future forward, to step out and to be known? Thank you for watching. And remember always, be a human.
Be a human.